So, hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. My name's Mike Merriam. For those that don't know me, longtime loan officer, mortgage coach, and in my most current role, VP of Affinity Partnerships for PRMG. My specific function is to build our real estate partnership program, which I'm going to have Chris take over because I think it's Chris's baby, and he can speak to it probably a lot more eloquently than I can.
Well, yeah, and of course, Scott, for those that don't know, Scott obviously has been a long time originator at a very, very high level. He's also a coach, and he's somebody that I respect and like and enjoy as a human being. So when I learned that Scott was kind of taking, in a friendly way, but taking kind of an opposing view based on what he knew of what I was doing, I thought, oh, this is the perfect opportunity to have a mutually respectful conversation, discussion about the pros and cons of what we created. But at a high level, I'll just say this. This would be my intro for this particular discussion for everybody. There was two events that I witnessed that I felt, man, this is a tectonic shift in our industry that we need to take advantage of as both real estate professionals and mortgage professionals. Number one, I was shocked when on December 15th of 2022, FHA put out a mortgagee letter 2022-22. That was mortgagee letter 2022-22, which reversed their long-standing position that you could now be the real estate professional and the loan officer on the exact same transaction. Fannie and Freddie never gave a shit, but FHA was vehemently against it. They're in the 4155 HUD manual, they are always saying, hey, listen, if you're going to do that, or their position was, if you're going to do that, you've got a higher probability of committing fraud because of the amount of money involved in the transaction. So if you are a loan officer and you were also the real estate professional in the transaction, you had so much money coming into you that you are more likely to commit fraud. So they just said no. The 4000.1 updated that, and they said, okay, well, now we'll accept you being employed by a lender, but you couldn't be the lender and the loan and the real estate agent on the same transaction. Okay, fair enough. And so we have some very aggressive folks on both coasts, right? The two states that are probably the most aggressive when it comes to pushing the envelope is California and Florida. And our dominant businesses in both of those states as a company. We're licensed in 49 states plus the District of Columbia, but we do a lot of business in both of those states. And so I had a lot of my managers wanting to hire real estate professionals, and they assured me they would only do Fannie and Freddie type products or non-QM products. And we had safeguards embedded in our organization to make sure that that would occur. If it was an FHA or a government transaction, it was a hard stop, and then we had to make sure that they weren't doing a dual role. So when they changed their position on December 15th, 2022, I was like, holy smokes, that's huge. All right, I didn't do anything about it per se until really September of 2023 at our leadership conference. And at that point, I had my own epiphany, and I thought, I've been dually licensed forever, right? I mean, I started in November of 87 as a real estate professional. And in January of 93, after Richie was born, I became a mortgage broker and then brokering and banking, and now banker. That's been my history of my career for the last 36 years. And I've maintained when they required a license for under the Dodd-Frank Act and under the new rules, under the CFPB, I got my MLS and just maintained my real estate license. I can tell you this firsthand, that as a real estate professional, I was far better at conversion at the up desk, at my open houses, when I cold called, and when I knocked on doors, because I followed my loan officer, David Chow, around like a puppy dog. I mean, I was enamored with him, and I was amazed. I would go with him on my referrals. I would go with him when he took the handwritten 1003, if anybody's old enough to remember those days. And I watched him convert my clients from a transaction to a lifetime referral source. And so I started applying some of what I learned from him in my interactions.
You're on. I turned it off.
Yeah, you might want to, there you go. Thank you. If someone, just make sure you mute yourself when you come on. Anyway, so without being overly verbose, I'll just say this. I believe that under the right confines and the right guardrails, a person who is astute on both the real estate side and the lending side serves the public best. Now listen, that's a dual-edged sword. That means that the loan officers also better learn the real estate side of the business, not because they're trying to earn a commission, but because they want to serve the public better. One more thing, and then I'll yield. When in August, 16th or 17th, whatever it was, when the NAR settlement went into place, that too was a huge shift in our business model. Agents need loan officers who are willing to serve and educate more than ever. And so we want to make sure, especially, and now because of the fact that you don't need to have a buyer compensation agreement executed to attend an open house, consumers are going to quickly learn that open houses are the shitsel. That's where you want to go, because I don't have to commit to Mike Merriam as a real estate professional in order to view the home. I can just go to the open houses. So open houses are going to be more popular than ever. So please make sure, if you walk away from this meeting, note that. You want to make sure that you have super open houses as opposed to just have an open house. Make sure it's a super open house and you attract as many people as possible and convert. But you're going to have a better time converting if you understand how to take a client who's unrepresented and show them in quick format and fashion the benefits of a concession versus a price drop. Real estate professionals that work with the Scott Groves of the world, here I'm going to compliment Scott because I know Scott is very good at this. His agents don't have a problem, but there's only so many Scotts and Scott Thompsons and my team. There's only so many of us to go around. The bulk of the realtors, when Barry Habib and Tim Brahim had their webinar maybe a month or so ago, and they cited that there's 1.5 million realtors and 1.1 haven't sold a single listing in the year 2024. That's proof positive that we as loan officers have an opportunity to be of better service than what we currently are. The opportunity is endless. And there's a shit ton of volume being done regardless of what anybody says. And if we go out there offering a higher value proposition, we're going to be able to obtain it. Let me yield for a minute, because otherwise my problem is I've already had a Vibrant, which is equal to 2 cups of coffee, they say. So I'll talk for the next hour and not shut up. So Scott, what are your thoughts at a high level? Tell me about your concerns.
Yeah. You know, when I talk to Mike, because Mike and I are old friends, we've done coaching together. I'm a big believer in one of the softwares that he has, Prospect Pulse. And when he's like, hey, this is the role that we're going to be doing. And then Chris, you and I have had a lot of cigars together and flirted with working together for probably a decade. I'm like, well, here's 2 guys that I respect, but my knee-jerk reaction is always like anything that like smells like pay to play just feels bad. And I'll tell you where I feel burned by this is, you know, back in 2008, when there was an administration change from Bush to Obama, I was working at Prospect Mortgage. And about 3 years later, in 2011, I was working at Prospect Mortgage. And Prospect Mortgage was one of the pioneers of like joint ventures, right? You put a good quality loan officer in a real estate office in Downey. The owner of that real estate office capitalizes the agreement. They put in 50 grand. The loan officer puts in 50 grand, or the company puts in 50 grand, and they create, you know, Prospect Mortgage West to do a joint venture. And then the realtors can share in some of the profits. And literally in 2007, they got an award from FHA saying, man, this is a model match for how to get access to quality lending in low to moderate income areas and help those consumers that can never become homeowners. And in 2012, they got a $3 million fine. And when they tried to fight it, they were like, hey, look, we've got the trophy from doing the thing that you're now giving us a $3 million fine for. And whoever it was, the CFPB at that time that had been created, they're like, sorry, different set of guidelines, different administration. Anything like that looks like a duck, walks like a duck. If it's any type of pay to play, you're a mess. We're just going to fine you for it. Now, I will say, only because that company has dissolved, there was also some shady shit going on behind the scenes. And for anybody that has worked on the east side of LA, you know, some of those realtors are like, hey, give me an envelope every time we close a deal, and you get all my deals. So, you know, there was some good and some bad going there. So like my knee-jerk reaction for the last decade has been like, ooh, anything that even sniffs like pay to play, I'm just out. I don't believe in it. It's wrong. You're going to get fined. It's all going to go to hell in a handbasket. And then you and I had some dialogue personally on Facebook where I'm like, oh, maybe these guys are doing it right. And I'm always just kind of the contrarian voice. Like I'm the one that thinks the sky is purple. So, you know, tell me where I'm wrong in that thought process.
Well, okay. So, and it's not a matter of being wrong. And thank God for people like you. And again, this isn't me just to put a love fest on Scott Groves. I mean, applies to any professional on this call that cares obviously about their license and cares about obviously raising the bar for our industry. I do as well, right? This is how I've built my legacy. And I want to be able to go down when I ultimately hang up my shingle and retire and maybe just kind of play at the business. Well, I want to make sure that people look upon me as somebody who tried to do the best job he could to raise the bar and make sure all of us were serving the public and its best interest. So with what you said, I agree 1000%. There was a lot of shenanigans going on and a lot of ABAs and MSAs that were not adhering, with notwithstanding the award they received, they were not following the spirit, especially in light of the CFPB creation. Man, there was a spotlight on lenders, and they were looking for ways to make examples out of people. And so that was then, and not that that still doesn't apply, but here's the nuances, and nuances are important. Here's the nuances that we've discovered. Number one, I think all of us on this call can agree that based on HUD's changes, and it's always been this way with everybody other than HUD, if a real estate professional chooses to take the 20-hour course, study for their exam and pass their exam, they've already proven they know how to pass an exam. So if they actually do that, they can stay working for KW, REMAX, C21, whomever, and actually hang their license and be duly employed, so long as their agreement with their real estate company allows for it. They can become duly employed with companies like ours, PRMG. So we'll hire them. Well, what's the pitfall there? Listen, the last thing I can afford as the leader of the retail division is to allow neophytes to go out there and go ready, fire, aim, and cause us to have a bad reputation. So that's where I tell real estate professionals, look, if you choose to go down this path, recognize your ignorance. That doesn't mean you're not a smart, brilliant individual, but you are ignorant because I'll pick on Scott Thompson or Sean Werner. These people know the guidelines like the back of their hands. They can turn chicken shit into chicken feed just like that. You don't know that yet. Now, conversely, they don't know the real estate side as well as you do. So come in and we'll pay you a co-origination fee commensurate with the amount of work that you're going to do. And as you invest more time and become better established in the business, then, and you want to do more, then of course we'll raise your commission because we want to retain great talent. But this way we make sure that the originator in fact is the person who is the expert, and the co-originator is the real estate professional who's a babe in the woods learning the process. Now that's if somebody wants to get licensed. And I would also say this before I go into the next vertical, if you will. Real estate professionals always have to ask themselves, am I aligning with an individual and an organization that has more to lose than I do? Let me repeat that. Are you doing business with an organization, mainly an organization, because that's really where the tire hits the road when it comes to suits and expungement of monies. But are you doing business with an organization who has more to lose than you do? Well, I can't speak for anybody else, but I can tell you that PRMG's got a ton to lose. Based on the most recent rankings, we're the 13th largest private lender in America. There is no way on my watch that I want to be responsible for an expungement of monies the way that Scott described it with Prospect. And so my CEO is my best friend, right? And so we talked to Fisher and Phillips, our outside law firm. We spent a lot of time with our general counsel internally. We hired an outside law firm and spent a lot of money to obtain a 13-page attorney opinion letter, making sure that we dotted our I's and crossed our T's, not just for our protection, but for anybody who partners with us. By default, you're going to be protected as well because we're being so cautious about this. But the second vertical, Scott, and this is where I've confused a lot of people. And again, it's the nuance of it. Going backwards for a second, the bulk of the realtors out there who choose to go down this path for all the right reasons because they want to be able to better serve the public and choose to actually take the time to pass that 20-hour course, take their exam and pass it, and then co-originate with us or somebody else under those guardrails I described, I think that's a good thing. But what about that top producer? You and I are always going after the top producers. As when I was originating, you know, today it's easier than ever, right? You can hunt with a sniper rifle because you can see through all the different resources, MMI, market insights, et cetera. You can see exactly who you want to do business with, who's doing all the business and the type of business they're doing. So what about those top professionals? What about that person who's working at one of the big box units or independents who has a team of 2, 3, 4, 5 buyers agents? They're directing business, and they don't understand that through their business development activities, they've got untapped income with the refinances of the people they put into homes in the last 2 or 3 years. They don't understand that they could actually receive friendly revenue off of their peers' closed transactions by doing business development with people that know, like, and trust them. And maybe they've gone to a Craig Proctor event together, maybe a Tom Ferry event together. That top team, that head of that top team, wields influence both inside their organization and out. Now, let me just say this, Scott, because I want your opinion on this. Let me pause for a second and give you my philosophy. I was taught by my dad to act as if you're the CEO of a publicly traded Fortune 500 corporation. What would you do? What time would you show up? What time would you leave? How detailed would you be if you've got 20, 30, 40, $50 million annualized income coming into you with stock options? Would you leave anything a chance? Well, hell no, I wouldn't.
Right.
And so with that thought in mind, I started thinking, okay, if I want to run a good organization, I'm going to set monies aside on every closing for future marketing. That's just good business. Most people on this call are guilty of it at times. How many people on this call have received a commission check, did the commission dance, and went out and spent it all? You didn't set, me too, right? You didn't set money aside for taxes. You didn't set money aside for savings. You didn't set money aside for that future assistant that you need to be able to scale your business. You just spent all the money. When you receive a $10,000 commission check, you're lucky if a couple grand is something you can actually spend if you're trying to run a business. And so if I actually tell myself, I'm going to set aside X number of basis points for the future growth of my business, for marketing my business, which is me, how do I want to invest those dollars? Well, I've got options. I can go to Zillow, which, by the way, has been the bane of our existence, right? That's a whole nother class we need to talk about, Mike Merriam, is how we've allowed as an industry Zillow to basically destroy the professionals. But on point, I can go to Zillow and I can buy their leads, and based on Zillow's own numbers, convert 1 out of 100. Or I can take those same dollars and look for that top producer that I just described and focus my attention and energies on a proven commodity and do it in a compliant manner. If I know that somebody's going to close enough business that I can hire them as a professional and pay them a salary and make them my business development specialist, make them my employee. As an employee and as an employer, I'm allowed to set expectations of what you need to do to earn the salary that I'm going to give you. And I'm going to give you an override component as well for your business development activities. I cannot pay you for referrals. That's illegal. That's a strict violation of Section 8 of RESPA. But I can pay you for business development activities, and I can hold you to account. I can have weekly Zoom meetings or bi-weekly Zoom meetings where I record it and I'm able to show the CFPB, hey, these people are logging in. I'm communicating with them on their company email. I'm recording my weekly or bi-weekly meetings with them to talk about the activities that they are required to do in order for them to be employed by me, which includes talking to other agents, talking to other people at business development, going after a group of people who have bought homes in the last 3 years about refinance activities. And now all of a sudden, if somebody is able to develop enough business where they're doing a couple $1 million a month with my organization and I'm paying them 50 basis points, that's 20 grand. That's $10,000. So that's $10,000 a month on $2 million in volume.
Chris,
3,500 on $1.5 million. That's not very much business, but it's enough for me to be able to afford to pay them a fixed expense plus an override. and now somebody compare that to legitimately
How are you? I'm
receiving.
listening to Chris Sorensen.
You sure are.
Yeah, you sure are, Deanne. I'm glad. Hopefully I'm doing okay. I better shut up right now because I know, again, there's that caffeine kicking in. So Scott, what's your thoughts?
I just want to ask, where do we get worried about, the CFPB coming in or challenging that 13-page opinion letter where they got that you got, where they say, well, Chris, we get it. We get the methodology, we get the analogy, but those business development or business marketing, right, activities are in fact leading to leads. And then, so even though you've got all the legalese, we're just going to call that paying for leads. And now you're screwed. You all lose your license. Like where are we creating that disconnect? Because this is the thing that I worried, right? And let's be honest, every loan officer in America is paying to play in some way, whether they pay for lunches or they're paying for list reports or they're stopping by. I got these fucking, excuse my language, these flyers made that have like all of the details of the loan limits and the commission thing. Those things cost me $2 each. So to go to a bunch of open houses, now it's a very trivial amount of money. CFPB is probably not going to be breathing down my throat for $400 of laminated stuff and the books that I give out and the lunches that I pay for. But in a manner that is, I'm paying to play to develop that relationship, have the realtor do business development activities. And then the end result is like, I got to get the leads and close the deals. So where does the legal setup of what you've done protect the loan officer or the company or the realtor from being like, no, there is a clear separation of church and state here where we're paying for business development activities. The byproduct might be leads. The loan officer might capture that lead. The loan officer might close that lead. But it's almost like there's a risk of like the better loan officer you work with, the better they are at converting those leads, the more the CFPB could connect those dots between business development and paying for leads. So like, how do you guys as a company protect that?
Yeah, great question. And again, that's where I mentioned about the nuances. And this is not, here's the problem. When I present this and look at my own company, I'm having to correct people, and I'll use that word in quotations. I'm having to correct people who work for me who are getting too far over their skis. Some people that work for me have tried to be cute and said, well, just log in for 1 hour a day. And then they actually do the login themselves. And they communicate with the people with their company email, with their real estate emails versus the company emails. And when I catch that, obviously we slap it down and say, no, that's not going to work. You have to build, you have to anticipate, to your point, Scott, which I'm so glad we're having this conversation. And I'm glad we have people that work for me on this call. And I'm going to be talking about this ad nauseum at our leadership conference in Huntington Beach here next week. Because the details and the subtleties, or as our general counsel said, the nuances do in fact matter. If I hire you, you're working for RE/MAX and you're a great team at RE/MAX, just picking on them. And I hire you, I have to protect both you and me, and of course, both of our companies, because if I'm guilty, you're guilty, right? From a future audit. And you're right, the last thing you and I can afford is 3 years down the road, because listen, some real estate agent says, well, Chris's company is only going to pay me X. This broker working in his boxers and flip-flops in Paducah, Kentucky is willing to pay me more. Okay, well, have at it. Right. How lucky do you feel? Because what's going to happen is 3 to 4 years down the road, when an audit does eventually come and they do find what that person set up wanting, that's when somebody's going to be made an example out of, and the real estate agent's going to be sitting there going, yeah, but I was told by that person that it was okay. Well, you think the CFPB gives two shits? No, they're going to make an example out of you. So yes, that's why I'm glad we're having this class, because this is a cautionary tale. I need to make sure that what you said, Scott, is so critical that I'm building a case to present to the CFPB that we are in fact are following not just the letter, but the spirit of the law. The spirit of the rule is per HUD and Fannie and Freddie, and of course non-QM, I am allowed now to have somebody duly employed. That's done. You can be duly employed. But the subtlety is, am I paying for referrals? So let's stop right there and hit the pause button for a second. Right now, many people have done MSAs. The biggest MSA player on the planet for the longest time was Movement. Right. How many people on this call didn't look and say, well, that's a bunch of bullshit. He's paying to play. and he's getting away with it. And he was, I mean, I steered clear of it because he like jumped right in after the CFPB was established, and he was paying every Tom, Dick, and Harry broker $5,000 to $10,000 or $20,000 a month to put their loan officer in there, and it was all a bunch of bullshit. You knew it, and I knew it. I think they've since obviously slowed way down because I think they also found that what they were doing was just a little bit too edgy, but and not profitable. But it put movement, if you will, on the map. So I would prefer to hire somebody and hold them accountable versus paying MLink to create some value for me for an MSA and dig some financial hole for myself as a company, hoping I'm going to get business out of that relationship.
Right.
Here, I'm going to go right to the source, to the person who's a proven commodity, and I'm going to have that conversation with them. Does an extra $7,000, $10,000, $20,000 matter to you? If it doesn't, then don't go down this path. But if it does, plus the control, because remember, if you're working for me as an executive, you're going to have access to the system. So now when one of your buyer's representatives comes knocking on your door and says, hey, I'm having a problem with this, or I don't know what's going on, you can simply log into the system and see the disposition of that file in seconds. So the control for a professional who's trying to give white glove service and set themselves apart from the big tech giants that are taking over the industry, if you want to give that white glove service, then be able to give answers and give instant gratification to the consumer and the people reporting to you. But now what I'm saying, Scott, is I'm going to build a case to defend myself. I'm going to make damn sure that the people are communicating with me, those professionals are communicating with me, those business development specialists, with the company email. I'm going to make damn sure that they're logging into our automated time clock, green shades in our case, logging in and then logging out. And so I have a record of them logging in, logging out, and communicating via email, and me emailing them saying, hey, what have you done for me lately? Tell me about the business development activities that I'm paying you to do. And then I'm going to hold a minimum bi-weekly recorded Zoom call where I can show them, hey, look, here's 2 years worth of recorded Zoom calls where we're having meetings discussing the business development activities. I'm not asking for referral business, for God's sakes. I'm asking my employee to do what I'm paying them to do. They happen to be licensed as a real estate professional, but per Fannie, per Freddie, per HUD, that's okay. It's legal.
So let me ask you this conceptual question, because Mandy, I think, has a good question. Like, what are the tasks that the realtors are doing to earn that money? Let's go first with, I think, the easier example. The realtor goes, they get their NMLS license, they go through the 20-hour SAFE course, and they do all that stuff. Now they're a licensed loan officer. They become an employee of the company. And are we saying that basically just because they happen to have a dual license, the realtor's over here and they've got their realtor hat on because they're door knocking and what have you and whatnot. But then when they come over here, they put on their lender hat and they're like, okay, now I am working for the company, PRMG in your case, of the lender to do business activities like work an open house to attract potential loan clients. I'm emailing my database, rate updates and whatnot. And so what you're saying is with the CFPB, you can make the case of like, no, because you now allow them to be dual licensed, they can wear their realtor hat over here when they're doing door knocking and looking for listings. And then they can put their PRMG hat on over here, put their NMLS hat on and say, well, now they're using the company email, PRMG, to email out to their own clients about rate updates, refinance opportunities, whatnot. And that's the delineation of duty that's going to protect everybody.
Well, the short answer is yes, but let's make sure because I think there's again, a nuance, a subtlety that's very important. What I just spent an exhaustive amount of time discussing was the person who's not licensed. You're not going back to the person who is licensed. The person who's licensed gives us the most protection because
Right.
You can be a dual licensed individual. If you're duly licensed, you're doing what you're legally entitled to do. And I can absolutely pay a loan officer who's registered with the MLS with our company a commission. And I get to determine as a company what is commissionable activities.
Yeah.
I don't want you as a licensed, if you're working for ABC Real Estate Company and I hire you as a loan officer, as a co-originator, let me pick on somebody here. I want,
Let's pick out Mandy because she asked the question.
there we go. I want Mandy to be the person who actually takes the application. I want Mandy to be the person who discusses the rate and terms. Not that the real estate professional who's licensed couldn't, but I want Mandy to be the senior, if you will, person who's making sure that the borrower is well cared for.
Yeah.
And we aren't having some, and again, it's not to insult anybody, but it's not having an ignorant or a neophyte loan officer whose primary focus is real estate, quoting rate and terms and talking about subtleties of a loan guideline when they're not prepared to do so.
Yeah.
Now, in time, listen, when I first started following David Chow around when I was a real estate agent at First Team back in the day, I didn't know jack about the lending business. But after following him around for a year, man, I was pretty damn good at it just because I just wanted to learn. At that point, under those set of circumstances, using that as an analogy for today in this opportunity, then I might pay that person a higher commission because they're actually capable and able to do more work to benefit the client. And the senior or seasoned loan officer can do less work. So I can actually balance out a commission that makes sense for all involved. Again, that's for the licensed professional.
Yeah.
Where
So
the scary part is, sorry, Scott, where the scary part is the non-licensed professional. That's the scary part.
Okay.
The scary part is now, yes, I need to build, obviously, a great defense to protect both them and me and this organization against that eventual audit. Because it's not just the CFPB. I mean, you have state auditors. Yeah, you have state auditors who have got a bigger. Oh, I got to remember I've got an audience here. Can't speak too much like a locker room talk, right? But you have state auditors who are uber aggressive.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you got some state auditor who's got, an HO, right, and for a particular issue, I've got to be able to make sure that we're protected from them equally. And so, yes, those subtleties and those nuances matter, and the tasks that I assign to that professional. So Mandy's question was, what type of tasks do they need to perform? Mandy, the answer is this. What does a business development specialist do? They do business development activities. That's what most mortgage professionals do if they're smart, right? If you're in the weeds of a file, you're never going to scale your business. So if Scott's coaching me, he's going to teach me that any time I'm not spending face-to-face with a client or prospective client is a waste of my time.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's what I want a business development specialist to do. I'm going to hold them to account to make sure that they are doing activities that develop business and instant business. It's nice to do. I was talking to somebody, one of my great teammates. I was talking to them via email this morning. It's great to do business development activities that are going to pay dividends in the future. Don't get me wrong. That's important. But what's most important, I said in my email, hey, this business is littered with skeletal remains of people who are trying to get business in the future and forgot about getting paid today. And so I've always been very aggressive I want to talk to an agent or a client about, hey, what's going to prevent you from giving me your very next transaction? Well, Chris, I don't like you. I think you're too aggressive. Okay, well, at least I now know, and I'm not going to spend time with you. I'm going to go find somebody who actually is just as aggressive as I, and I appeal to them. There's someone for everyone. Let me pause. Hope that answered that question.
Yeah, I want to go back to the business development because, like you said, that's the scarier part. Having somebody with dual licensing, I can, they're being compliant, they're appropriately licensed by both verticals. I can get that. The business development one, and your words, not mine. That's the more scary one. I think we kind of have a carve out for this already, where my non-licensed LOA has in their comp agreement, hey, if you're putting out there that Scott Groves is the best lender since Swiss cheese, you've got a friend or family member who comes in, I'm going to pay you, I can't pay them basis points because they're not licensed, but I'm going to pay you $1,000 bonus on any deals that you refer into the system or any at-bats that you get me, because you can't do the licensable activity. You're an LOA, you're not licensed. I am licensed. But if you're doing business development on my behalf, and you want to spend your weekends out at open houses, or you want to bring in friends and family when rates drop and there's refinances available, there is a legal way for me to pay my LOA for effectively business development activities. Am I kind of barking up the right tree?
You are. The only thing that the only thing that I would say is I believe, based on 3 different attorneys, if you will, looking at what we're doing, who are unrelated to each other, I believe that you can pay basis points so long as it's in their agreement up front and it's a fixed basis point or a fixed dollar figure. So that's the only subtlety. But yes, you're exactly right. That's the same premise. And so, if somebody, here's where you can also get in trouble, quite frankly, is, wage and labor, right? If somebody's being paid an hourly wage, right? Because I'm going to keep my expenses, I'm going to keep my fixed expenses as low as possible. So I'm going to typically pay them minimum wage for that area that they're in, the state that they're in. And I'm going to convert that minimum wage based on the number of hours I believe that they're going to work, maybe 2 or 3 hours a day. I'm going to convert that into a loan amount. And I'm going to say, all right, up to $250,000, $300,000 in funded loan volume, you're getting the monies that I'm paying you, the hourly wage I'm paying you. Anything above that, I'm going to pay you X, whether it be a fixed amount or basis points. So let's say for easy math, for shits and giggles, I say 50 basis points, right? Well, okay, so if you close $1 million worth of closed loan volume and I can credit you for that, you're going to get your hourly wage, let's call that 1,500, and the other 8,500 is going to come in the form of a 50 bip override. Or, well, I'm sorry, 3,500, because I said $1 million. So you'll receive two components to your income. And again, the reason that's legal is because I'm hiring you as an employee to do certain activities. You happen to be licensed doing real estate, and I'm aware of that, and my employment agreement with you allows for that. But I'm not asking you to refer your clients to me. I'm asking you to do business development activities. Now, there's nothing to preclude some of your business activities to result in you're handling both deals, right? You're on your real estate company, you're handling the real estate side. And as a business development specialist working for me, we happen to have the same client. And I know that may sound like I'm trying to be cute, but that's why you have to build a case. And that's the reason why you have to have the communication, the time log, and the recorded meetings. And you show a consistent pattern that this person is not just doing business with their own group, but they're reaching out to their past client. I mean, think about this. How many real estate agents are like, I never thought about that. I give all my business to Scott Groves, and when the refinances start occurring in a robust fashion in 2025, I don't get jack shit. But Scott's making more money than ever, hand over fist, on all the clients that I put into home loans over the last 2-3 years. Well,
Right.
what if you could actually tap into that and actually be financially rewarded? What about the fact that they actually wield influence? I mean, top producers, people, I mean, I can speak for myself. I always looked, Barbara Greenfield was the top producer. She just, rest in peace, she just passed away here a couple months ago. But Barbara Greenfield was she was it at the real estate office in Anaheim Hills, California, where I worked. Out of 122 agents, she was always number one, and beyond. I mean, but man, she was really good. And I learned from coaches early on in my career, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to find somebody who's performing in your field better than you and mirror their actions. Well, there are people like me who will follow great leaders. And there's Scott, I mean, again, not just to suck up to you, but even if you weren't an official coach, when you perform at a high level, there are people in your ecosystem, whether you know them or not, who want to mirror your actions. And if you let them know, hey, if you want to be like me when you grow up, if you want to do my volume, make sure you're using this individual for your loans. And if all of a sudden now I'm your loan officer and I start getting additional business, you were the genesis, you were the source. It was your business development activities that actually rewarded me and made the company and everybody more successful. I want to reward top professionals for that behavior.
Right. So on the business development side, I'm thinking, to keep you safe, the logins, like obviously paying the hourly wage, the logins to the Zoom meetings. Can you give us a taste of not the licensed person, because they can do licensable activities, whatever, take the 7 pieces of information, whatnot, but the business development specialist, can you give us a couple ideas of like the type of activities that you're coaching these realtors on? Like, hey, if you want to get paid, it's not about just getting your referrals. If that's a byproduct, cool. But we need you to be doing these 3 to 5 things weekly on your social media, in your daily practice, in order to keep us all safe. So I can point to you as a shining star and say, okay, yes, this person is hanging their license at ABC brokerage for real estate, but they're also spending 3 hours a day doing these very specific activities to do business development on behalf of PRMG? Like, can you talk through what some of those activities are? Because I think if the CFPB or the state regulators ever coming, that if they ever come, which they will, that's where the rubber meets the road, right?
Yeah, for that matter, we don't know if somebody's, we could have a CFPB or a state auditor on this call physically right now,
Right.
or we could have a not so friendly competitor who wants to be able to hear something and report it. I mean, when I read the CFPB's audits, they said that 80% of the audits that they do, the genesis was a complaint from a competitor. And so, yes, you have to recognize, obviously,
business, people, stop being a bitch and do your own business.
I know, right? But yeah, I'm anticipating somebody on this call. There could be maybe one, but there could be have one person on this call who's like, I'm going to get that Chris Sorensen. And check this out, just as a quick sidebar. We're a 3-channel company, right? We buy closed loans from emerging bankers. We have 6,000 brokers across the United States that we support. We're the 5th largest wholesaler, privately held. And we do retail, which is that's my baby. I mean, I can't tell you how many people on the broker side of the equation, when they first heard me talk about this, lost their ever effing mind. They're like, hey, Chris Sorensen, PRMG is stealing all of our realtors. It's like as if there's not enough to go around for the
Right.
best of the best. But that's where obviously we have to be careful. There's going to be people out there for a myriad of reasons who are going to try to attack what we're doing. So that's why I love having this discussion with you, because frankly, Proverbs 17:17, iron sharpens iron. Scott, you're going to make me better and make me reflect on what I'm doing and make sure that I dot my I's and cross my T's even better because of this discussion. So candidly, thank you for pushing me. So now, what are some of the things that they need to be doing? I love what you said about social media. That social media is obviously heir apparent. That's proof, if you will, that they're marketing the company and telling people, hey, if you want to be able to get the best of the best, here's where you go. Come to this landing page, fill out your information, and we'll make sure you're well taken care of, whatever. So we're going to make sure that they have a landing page that they obviously promote so we can track their personal activity, right? WordPress document, name, number, or an apply now button for a particular loan officer that's designated for that business development specialist. So that's encompassing one idea. The other things that I would coach everybody to do is, look, we created, and this is a great way for real estate professionals, obviously, to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We created at PRMG what I call an affinity relationship for employers. It's nothing new. I put a giving component twist to it because I recognize that people buy an emotion first and justify the expense secondarily. Well, it's no different with an employee benefit program. If you're Scott Groves, if you're the CEO of Scott Groves Enterprises, and I come to you and I say, hey, Scott, do you have a particular charity that's near and dear to your heart? Now, again, I'm now the real estate professional, business development person working for Chris Sorensen, having this conversation with you. And I go to a CEO or an HR director of any size organization and I say, hey, Scott, do you have a charity that's near and dear to your heart? And you say, yeah, you know what? Rady's Children's Hospital down in San Diego saved my neighbor's baby's life. What they did was incredible, and the care and the love and the attention to detail, and had to give that child open heart surgery within literally 12 hours of being born. And that's a true story, by the way. That one of my very best friends. I've only got a couple of them, but his grandson had to have open heart surgery within 12 hours of being born. And Rady's, just witnessing what they did was just off the charts. So they have a 501c3 and you can donate to that hospital. And so if that's something that is emotionally appealing to that particular CEO, in this case, Scott Groves, I'm going to say, well, look, I want to create an employee benefit program that's going to help your employees, your friends and family, and even your customers save thousands of dollars whenever they are going to buy or sell real estate. While I can't make it compulsory, what I'm going to do is, between my real estate professional and myself, we're going to be reminding those employees and your customers that the reason why they're saving $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in closing cost, because we set money aside between the realtor and myself to credit them, that the reason why they're receiving this huge benefit is because you're trying to support a worthy cause. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, Mr. Mrs. Seller, could you please, since you're receiving this $3,000 credit, could you please consider taking just 10%, maybe just $300, and making a donation to the link below the CEO's image on the landing page? Together, we may save a child's life.
And so
Okay.
this is the business activity that the realtor would be doing, because
Cool.
presumably the realtor is more tied into the community than the loan officer is, because we're sitting at our desk and they're out meeting people every day. So this would be like one of the examples of a business development activity that the realtor would basically make your company shine, potentially get more leads and deals over to the loan officer, and then that makes you, as the president of the company, feel comfortable paying the realtor for those business development activities.
Aha, I'm not paying the realtor, am I? I'm paying my business development specialist. If I paid the realtor, that would be questionable at best, illegal at worst. But because they're allowed to be duly employed per Fannie, per Freddie, per HUD, I'm not paying a realtor, I'm paying my business development specialist. And that's the difference.
Yeah. And you have the proof, because you're paying them minimum wage to show up hourly to do those activities. You have the proof that they are truly an employee.
Yes. And they're logging in, they're doing work. And again, this isn't for everybody. This, first off, I'm going to eliminate 90% of the realtors out there because they don't do enough business for me to be able to justify hiring them.
Right.
But for that 10%, and then at that 10%, there's also a percentage of people who are going to say, Chris, I just don't want to do that. I don't want to have to do the work. You're asking me to do some things I don't want to do. That's fine too. Here's what I tell my team. Who gives a shit? If this causes you to be able to have a conversation that you wouldn't have been able to have otherwise, and this allows you to be able to say, hey, listen, even if you don't do this, most loan officers work at a level 5 or 6, maybe a 7 if you're lucky. I work at a level 9. I'm intense. I'm aggressive. But I tell you what, nobody's going to get up earlier and stay up later than I am to make sure that your clients want to give you the next referral business, the next referral. And so if you want to be able to give me a chance to audition, even if we don't do what I'm suggesting, at least give me a chance to be able to curry favor with you and audition for your next client. So it's a way, Scott, it's a way of creating conversations with real estate agents that you might not have had otherwise. Worst case scenario. Best case, it's a combination of both, where you get to audition and you get to have them become your business development specialist, and they do enough business where it pencils out for all involved.
I like it. And I want the audience, I'm just checking on Facebook to see what questions we have there. If you're in the audience and you have questions about this, or you want to try to poke holes in it, by all means, be professional, but put your comments in the chat box. Somebody on Facebook, one of my friends who's the most nasty contrarian, my buddy Michael Ullman, he's like, yeah. I'm sure Prospect had an attorney as well. There's no shortage of shady lawyers that are willing to take $1,000 an hour to give you an advice that they don't have to stand behind in 2 years. So when you look at these opinion letters, or you look at the lawyers, like, where are you indemnified against the lawyer having a bad opinion? Because Michael's not wrong, right? Like, I have an opinion letter from a trust attorney about gift funds and why you don't owe taxes on gift funds, because every grandparent from Cleveland, Ohio, that's given their kid in LA 200 grand, they're like, oh, I'm going to get taxed. I'm like, no, here's this opinion letter from this lawyer who is telling you you're not going to get taxed on these gift funds. Well, 3 years from now, who knows whether that lawyer is going to stand behind that opinion letter. So how do you protect yourself with the right lawyers and the right law firms in this setup?
Yeah. Great comment from Matt, and great question. And you are 100% right. I mean, attorneys will defend you until the money's gone, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, there is no quote unquote indemnification insurance policy that you can purchase because some attorney gave you advice that ultimately didn't pan out. In fairness to that comment, I've witnessed lawsuits in my role where somebody might be 100% right, but the cost of defending that position, even if you're right, becomes unsustainable, right? You may be right, but by the time you've written 300, 400, 500,000, $1 million worth of attorney's fees, you're like, what am I fighting for?
And by the way, that's what happened with Prospect. The CFPB or whoever it was that fined them the $3 million. They said, hey, you're probably right, But what we're going to do is we're going to drag this through the courts for like the fucking mob. They were like, we're going to drag this through the courts for the next 5 years. We're going to suspend your ability as a mortgage company to do FHA loans over the next 5 years, which is going to cost you way more in profit than 3 million. So wink, wink, nod, nod. We're the mob. You need protection. Just give us the 3 million. And they did. They had to stroke a check for 3 million, you know, or however much the money was. Maybe I'm getting the facts slightly wrong, but the spirit of it, I know I'm right on.
Yeah. So here's what I would tell. Here's how I would address that. The first off, if anybody is that anxious over this, well, there's your answer. You don't pursue it. You don't do it. End of story. If you say, well, the company's willing to support me and the company's willing to take the risk, you know, foolhardy or not, maybe it's okay. Here's what I would say. When I first brought this up to my leaders, my managers, last September down in San Diego at our leadership conference, it was a rare idea. But I promised everybody what is rare today will be prolific tomorrow. And here we are a year later, and I can tell you it is prolific. We are not the only ones. You know, what I thought I was very clever. You know, I sat down with my CEO and Paul and I were kind of discussing, and we're like, all right, as long as we have these guardrails, because Paul's like, I don't want to give up generational wealth. You know, I've owned this company and founded this company with Robert 20 years ago. We've survived everything. The last thing I want is Chris Sorensen to have some harebrained idea that's going to take me down. Right. And so, but Paul's an originator, right? Him and Robert they're top originators who've just done good in this business as a company. And so they're very aggressive. They think like an originator. And so he's like, you know what, as long as you're involved and you're making sure that these things are being adhered to, I'm going to support this idea. And I'll be damned. Where I was trying to keep it a secret because the brokers that we support were losing their minds. So we had to be kind of subtle about it. Now, some of the top broker companies in the nation are doing it, or some semblance therein. Some of my biggest competitors, you know, when you look at the top 20 lenders in America that we compete with, half of them have a similar program. And the other half are working on it. I know because they call me and ask me, hey, you know, how'd you set that up? So right. It's not, you know, and so look at, if the CFPB is going to slap us down, we're not the only ones, and there is a little bit, at least for me, I'll just give you my personal humble opinion. There's a little bit of that safety and numbers aspect to this, so long as you're doing it the right way and you're doing everything you can to follow the letter and the spirit of RESPA, I feel pretty good about it.
Cool, man. Well, I know we said we were going to end this at 10 o'clock and people probably have their calls. What's your parting thought, Chris?
You know, my parting thought is, here's my parting thought. We on this call and the people who will watch any snippets or whatever, and have an obligation to make sure that we are bringing more value than ever before to the public. We are competing with Zillow, Redfin, Homes.com. All the tech giants are spending billions of dollars to get to the client first and then give them a one-stop shopping experience. That's all I'm trying to do. And so I'm saying, if you're going to compete with them, you have to give white glove concierge service. You got to make sure that you're well prepared by educating yourself on both sides of the equation, and use the tech stack that companies like ours and others have to get to the client first. Whoever gets to the client first wins. Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae report that 70% of the loans they purchase, the loan officer who took the complete application is the loan officer who closed the deal. The first person who takes the application, 70% of the time, is the person who closes the transaction. And so, yeah, I just say we just need to raise the bar of our industry and make sure we're better prepared to serve the public, because the public is demanding it based on the tech giants' marketing.
I love it, man. And Mike's been pretty quiet, but if you guys have more questions, reach out to Mike Merriam. Mike, where can people find you?
Yeah, just so mmerriam at prmg.net, Mike at MikeMerriam.com, Facebook, you know, all over the place. Who can get a word in with you two guys? I don't think I'll ever speak again. Frankly, I enjoy it. It's nice. I sit here for an hour. I don't have to say anything. It's fantastic.
Chris, I do want to talk about that maybe as a placeholder, and Annie, my assistant who's on the call, will do this. I do want to have that placeholder of like, because one of my pushbacks is like, well, why don't just all the mortgage professionals spend the money that we're going to spend on these realtors telling the story? Your search for a home starts with your lender, right? Like, I would love if all the CEOs and all the presidents of the mortgage companies could get together and say, hey, you know what? It doesn't even really take a realtor to close a deal, although in 99% of the cases there is. Like, why aren't we just going after the consumer first? So maybe we can hold that for our next call on, like, what are the future strategies for loan officers to get to the consumer first by telling that story. Hey, your search for a home loan starts with a lender, because that's some of the messaging that I would love to see coming out of places.
So Scott, I will say this, and I'm glad, and Mike, schedule another call with Scott and I, because I want to talk about what you just said. I wrote a book. I was paid by I was paid by the Department of Real Estate and the community college system in California to write a book, Financial Sense to White Picket Fence, in which I taught the 4 B's: budgeting, borrowing, buying, and beyond, in that order. So you and I are equally yoked when it comes to that thought process. But we have to recognize that people buy an emotion first. That's the reason why people go to open houses. That's the reason why they spend time on Zillow, is because they find that emotional appeal and then say, hey, Scott, can you help me figure out a way to finance my dream of home ownership? So let's talk about that, because that's a phenomenal topic. So till next time.
Till next time, man. Love you.
All right,
Thanks
everyone.
for having me on, and thanks for the respectful conversation addressing my concerns.
Of course. Love you, brother.
Talk soon, man.
All right. See you, everyone.